If you are a senior living in the United Kingdom and you have been relying on your property or your pension to see you through your retirement years, then I need you to pay very close attention to what I am about to share with you, because the next few minutes could genuinely change the way you think about your financial security. Something extraordinary happened last week in the British property market, and it happened so quickly that most ordinary people have not even had time to process what it means for them and their families. I am going to break it all down for you in plain, simple terms, because you deserve to know the truth about what is happening to the value of your home and your retirement savings. Let me start with the headline that should have been on every news channel, but somehow got buried beneath celebrity gossip and political distractions. One of the largest investment companies in the entire world, a firm called BlackRock that manages more money than most countries have in their entire economies, decided to sell off their entire collection of residential properties across the United Kingdom. We are talking about properties worth approximately £14 billion being dumped onto the market in just 4 days. They did not try to get the best price for these homes, they simply wanted out as fast as possible, and they accepted losses of around 40% just to get rid of them quickly. Now you have to ask yourself, why would the smartest financial minds in the world take such enormous losses on British property unless they knew something terrible was coming? But that was only the beginning of the storm. Other major investment companies saw what BlackRock was doing, and they followed suit almost immediately. Within the same week, we saw another company called Vanguard sell off £8 billion worth of property, followed by State Street offloading £6 billion more. By the time the dust had settled on that single week, more than £43 billion worth of institutional investment had fled the British property market. These are not emotional decisions made by panicking homeowners. These are calculated moves made by sophisticated computer algorithms and highly paid analysts who study risk for a living. When all of these systems reach the same conclusion at the same time, that British property is something to run away from rather than hold on to, we should all be paying very close attention. Now here is the part that should concern every single retired person watching this video right now. There was a document published by the Office for Budget Responsibility buried deep on page 847 of their autumn forecast, where most journalists would never think to look. This document contained a projection that mortgage defaults in the United Kingdom could reach 11% by March of next year. To put that into perspective for you, during the financial crisis of 2008, which many of you will remember as one of the worst economic disasters in modern history, mortgage defaults peaked at just 3%. We are now looking at a situation that could be nearly 4 times worse than the crash that brought the global economy to its knees almost 2 decades ago. I want to talk directly to those of you who are depending on your pension to get you through your retirement, because this next part is absolutely critical for you to understand. British pension funds have placed a tremendous amount of their investments into property, with some estimates suggesting that around 62% of pension money is tied up in buildings and land. When property values decline sharply, those pension funds lose value right along with them. We have already seen several major pension property funds freeze withdrawals, meaning that people who wanted to take their money out were simply told that they could not. Legal & General did this, Aviva followed, and then M&G joined them. Combined, these 3 funds alone represent about £43 billion that ordinary British people cannot access because the properties backing those funds cannot be sold for anything close to what they were previously valued at. If you are finding this information valuable, and you want to stay informed about developments that could affect your retirement and your financial security, please take a moment right now to subscribe to this channel and tap that notification bell so you never miss an important update. I am committed to bringing you the truth about the property market in plain English that anyone can understand, and your support helps me continue doing this work. Now let me explain something that happened very quietly that most people have completely missed. The government recently made a change to pension regulations that should alarm everyone who has money in a retirement fund. Previously, pension funds were required to maintain funding levels of at least 90%, meaning they had to have 90 pence for every pound they owed to pensioners. The government has now quietly lowered that requirement to just 70%. Think about what that means for a moment. Your pension statement might show a healthy balance. But the rules have been changed so that funds can hide the fact that they are actually 30% short of what they need to pay you what you have been promised. There is another massive problem coming down the road that will hit in just a few months. Back when the government was encouraging people to get onto the property ladder, they created a scheme called Help to Buy that allowed people to purchase homes with the government lending them up to 20% of the purchase price interest-free for the first 5 years. Well, those 5 years are now coming to an end for approximately 2 million households across the country. Starting in March of next year, these families will suddenly have to start paying interest on those government loans, adding hundreds of pounds to their monthly outgoings that they have not been budgeting for. Many of these families will not be able to afford the new payments, and because property values have fallen, they cannot sell their homes without owing more than the sale would bring in. They are trapped, and when trapped, people are forced to sell. They accept whatever price they can get, which pushes everyone else's property values down even further. Something else happened recently that has not received nearly enough attention. Several major insurance companies have announced that they are pulling out of the British property insurance market entirely. Zurich Insurance was first, making their announcement in the early hours of the morning, followed by AXA and Allianz on the same day. By the end of that business day, roughly 40% of the insurance capacity for British property had simply vanished. The reason behind this exodus is climate change and specifically flood risk. Updated climate models are showing that an enormous number of British properties will be at serious flood risk within the next few years, and insurance companies have decided that they simply cannot calculate premiums that would make covering these properties worthwhile. Without insurance, you cannot get a mortgage, and without mortgages available, properties become extremely difficult to sell. Early estimates suggest that nearly 4 million properties across the country may find themselves effectively uninsurable and therefore unsaleable in the very near future. For those of you who own property in areas near rivers, coastal zones, or low-lying land, I would strongly encourage you to check what the future flood risk assessments say about your postcode, because this could have enormous implications for the value of your home and your ability to sell it if you ever need to. I also want to mention something about foreign investment in British property, because this has been a major driver of prices, particularly in London and the South East. Recent changes in regulations in China and Singapore have put pressure on citizens of those countries who own property abroad to sell up and bring their money home. Chinese citizens now face serious legal consequences if they do not repatriate funds from overseas property holdings, and similar pressures are building in other countries that have traditionally invested heavily in British real estate. We are talking about hundreds of billions of pounds worth of property that may need to find new buyers in a market where institutional investors have already fled and domestic buyers are struggling to get mortgages. If you have made it this far into the video, I really want to thank you for staying with me through this difficult information. Please do consider subscribing to the channel if you have not already, because the coming months are going to bring many more developments that could affect your property, your pension, and your overall financial security. By subscribing, you will be among the first to know about important changes, and you will have the information you need to make the best decisions for yourself and your family. Now, I want to address what all of this means for ordinary retired people who have worked hard their entire lives and expected that their property and their pension would provide them with security in their later years. The reality is that we are facing a period of significant uncertainty in the British property market, and the decisions you make over the coming months could have lasting consequences for your financial well-being. Property prices have already fallen considerably when you account for inflation, and there are serious structural problems that suggest further declines could be on the horizon. Local councils across the country are also in serious financial trouble, with many facing the prospect of bankruptcy after years of borrowing money to fund property developments that are now worth far less than anticipated. When councils go bankrupt, services get cut dramatically, and areas that lose their basic services become even less attractive places to live, creating a downward spiral for property values in those areas. We have already seen councils declare effective bankruptcy, and reports suggest that well over 100 more could follow in the coming year. The Bank of England is watching all of this very closely, and there are growing concerns about the health of the major British banks themselves. With property making up such an enormous part of the collateral that backs bank loans, falling property values directly threaten the stability of the banking system. The banks have responded by dramatically reducing the number of mortgages they are willing to approve, which in turn means fewer buyers in the market, which puts further downward pressure on prices. I want to be clear that I am not trying to frighten anyone unnecessarily, but I believe that senior citizens in this country deserve to know what is happening with their money and their assets. The mainstream media often glosses over these issues or buries them beneath more sensational stories, but for people who are living on fixed incomes and relying on property wealth or pension payments to see them through retirement, this information could not be more relevant. If you own your home outright and plan to live in it for the rest of your life, the day-to-day fluctuations in property value may matter less to you than to someone who is planning to sell and downsize. However, if you were counting on releasing equity from your property to fund your retirement, or if you were hoping to leave a valuable inheritance to your children or grandchildren, then understanding what is happening in the market right now is absolutely essential. For those of you who have pension money invested in property funds, I would strongly suggest reviewing your statements carefully and understanding exactly where your money is invested. If possible, speak with a financial advisor about whether your current allocation makes sense given the changes we are seeing in the property market. Many pension funds offer options to switch between different types of investments, and having a greater portion of your retirement savings in more liquid assets might provide you with more flexibility and security during uncertain times. Once again, thank you so much for watching this video and for trusting me to bring you important information about the British property market. If you found this helpful, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with friends and family members who might also benefit from understanding what is really happening with property values and pensions in our country. Together, we can make sure that ordinary people have access to the same information that big institutions use to make their decisions. I will see you in the next video, where I will continue to bring you honest, straightforward analysis of the issues that matter most to your financial future.